Awesome. All right, really excited for you guys. Congratulations on making it through, absolutely crushing it, which is awesome. I'm really excited now to talk to you about something that can sort of shift the way that you look at leverage, and most significantly the way that you look at actually achieving those quality connections, which is super powerful. And it's this idea of what everybody wants, and it all comes back to this core of significance, and then there's so much to develop on top of it. I'm just really pumped for it. This is a really impactful chapter, and one that I'm super pumped for. I hope you are too. So with that said, let's go over to the computer and let's make it happen. Awesome. So here's the core, right? Like, wouldn't you like to have a magic phrase, okay? It would stop arguments. It would eliminate ill feeling and would create goodwill and make the other person listen attentively. Here it is. This is literally gold. And like, maybe you won't like specifically say this phrase because it kind of sounds like it's written 100 years ago, but the core principles behind this phrase, I want you to understand really what's implied by this phrase. This is a really powerful mindset shift, and if you can master this, it will have results in all aspects of life. It's a very powerful underlying concept. So with that said, the phrase is you cannot, don't blame people. Don't blame you one iota, which is just like a little teeny bit, for feeling as you do. Rather, if I were you, remember, you gotta understand, like, the reason people have feelings is because of their backgrounds. If I were you, I would undoubtedly, here's the kicker, right? Feel just as you do. Because in reality, this is gonna justify to someone else their feelings. It's gonna justify their emotions. It's gonna make them feel secure, feel safe, and allow you to understand this. Because it totally softens any sort of conflict. And you can say this with 100% sincerity, because if you were the other person, you would feel just like they did. Take Al Capone. We talked about it earlier, this idea that if you had inherited the same body, the same temperament, the same mind that Al Capone had, you would be Al Capone. If you had the exact same environment and experience as somebody else, you're gonna be them. You'd be precisely what they are and where they are. Because it's for these things and only these things that you can make a person who they are. As that result, like, for example, like, that you're not a rattlesnake, it's not because your mother and father were, it's because like your mother and father are rattlesnakes, right? So it all comes down to this concept that people's backgrounds turn into their realities, they turn into their personalities, they turn into their humanity. And there's this one quote that is just so ridiculously powerful that he puts right here, and it blew my mind when I read it. I thought it was massive, and I'm super excited to share it. It says, you deserve very little credit for being what you are. And remember, the people who come to you irritated, bigoted, unreasoning, deserve very little discredit for being what they are. Because in reality, you want to feel sorry for the poor devils, pity them, sympathize with them, and say to yourself, there, but for the grace of God, go I. Because in reality, personalities and what you see in the present is simply a reflection of the past. And you guys, you'll see this in the seminar with Midnight, where they have that huge blizzard in like the middle of the holiday season. And there's like snow everywhere, and everyone's ending, and there's this insane dramatic song with Luna and with Starlight about how her past has created her present. And that's the exact same concept that happens every single day in real life. You look at people that start, charities or huge companies that have this really big, impactful cause they're working towards. Vast majority of the time, that comes from their roots. Like Grant Cardone, like, he's got a very big charity to give to kids who don't have dads, because when he grew up, he didn't have a dad. It all comes from where the person comes from, and their past becomes their present, and their present sculpts their future. So it's critical you take control of the present, and you also understand other people's past, so you can understand where they are in the present and have the best leverage going into the future. That's the powerful statement that can change it all. Listen to that again if you have to. Really cool stuff. It's just a really great example with Dale. He once gave a broadcast about the author of Little Women, Luz Alcott, and naturally, he knew that she lived and written her books in Massachusetts, but without thinking about what he was saying, he spoke of visiting her old home in Concord, New Hampshire. And if he said New Hampshire only once, it might have been forgotten, but alas, he said it twice. He said New Hampshire twice, when in reality she's from Massachusetts. Not a big deal. I mean, mistakes happen. That's okay. It's not a big deal. The world will not end because he got the location of this author wrong. The challenge came when, after this happened, he got tons of letters, tons of telegrams, tons of messages that swirled all around the world, defending this lady like a swarm of hornets. And many were indignant, some were insulting. And one person who, had lived in Massachusetts and who was then living in Philadelphia and had also lived in Concord, vented, her scorching wrath upon Dale. And she couldn't have been more bitter if he accused this lady, this author, of being a cannibal from New Guinea. And as he read this letter, he said to himself, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I'm not married to that woman. But most significantly, he was like, what could make this person so upset, so mad? And what could I do to change that? And so he felt like writing her and telling her that although he made a mistake, like in geography, she had made a far greater mistake in common courtesy. Like, that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to write that mean letter, like that mean letter that Lincoln would write. And he wanted to actually mail it, even though Lincoln would never mail his mean letters. He actually wanted to send her back that mean letter. But then he thought about it, and he rolled up his sleeves, and he really wanted to tell her what he thought, but he couldn't. He controlled himself! And he realized that any hot-headed fool could do that. And that most fools would do just that. He wanted to be above the fools. He wanted to be different. He wanted to make a change. And so he resolved to try to turn her hostility into friendly. And it'd be a challenge, it's sort of a game that he could play where he could say to himself, after all, if he was her, he'd probably feel just the same as she does. And so he was determined to sympathize with her viewpoint, understanding that he could be in the same situation she was in. And it's not her fault that her past was how it was. And instead, the next time he was in Philadelphia, he called her on the telephone, and basically he said, hey, I got your letter, I wanted to thank you for it. And this lady's like, who's this? And then Dale's like, hey, I'm the guy who was on the radio, and he sent me a letter. And she says, oh, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry that I lost my temper and wrote you that mean letter. Because most of the time, people, they feel bad about doing bad, and they know that it's bad. So even if you get this mean thing, in all reality, a lot of the times, the person who sent it to you feels bad about sending it to you. And so you just have to understand it. Look, you gotta take it with a grain of salt, pass by it, don't sweat it, and just not care. You gotta care, but not that much. And so this guy says, no, you are not the one to apologize. And then he starts criticizing himself and attacking himself and saying that he was the worst person ever for making that mistake. And then here's the critical part. She starts to talk about herself. She talks about her background from Massachusetts, talks about her family, and how she was so proud of her history and her heritage, and how this author, Ms. Alcott, had lived in New Hampshire. And she's so sad about the letter, and then she talks about her history. And then Carnegie did something here that is really powerful. And he starts to focus on her. He says, look, you know what? It's totally my fault. It's not your fault. I am 10 times more sorry. And it's so seldom that people stand to their culture. And he says, thank you for writing into the radio, and I hope that you'll do it again if you detect any error on my talk. And all he does is criticize himself and pump up this woman and make her seem like she is more powerful, more significant, and more important than he. And what she says next really kind of consolidates and brings together everything we've been working on, everything we've been talking about, into this one key concept of giving a ridiculous amount of value to other people using social situations. She says, I really like very much the way you have accepted my criticism. Accept criticism. Because even though criticism sucks, you can't deflect it, you can't fight it, you can't go against it. It's an argument that's stupid and won't work. You must be a very nice person. I should like to know you better. And so because Dale apologized and sympathized with her point of view, she began apologizing and sympathizing with his point of view. And then he had the satisfaction of controlling his temper, the satisfaction of returning kindness for an insult. And he got infinitely more real fun out of making her like him he could have ever gotten out of telling her to go and take a jump off into this Schuylkill River. It's so much more important, it's so much more fulfilling to have that positive life, right? It's critical. What's interesting is every man who occupies the White House is faced almost daily with thorny problems in human relations. And what's cool is he points out this example of President Taft, who was no exception, and how he learned from experience the enormous chemical value of sympathizing and neutralizing the acid of hard feelings, which is not where you want to be, right? You want to be in happiness.